Fast Forward Productions. The women are speaking. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the One Broke Actress podcast, an honest account of actor life plus a few lessons I learned in the process. I am your host, Sam Valentine, and today we have a very, very unique podcast because you're getting not one, but two guests. And they are not single threats, not double threats, triple threats, quadruple threats. You be the judge, because we have Kerry and Quinn, who run the Truly Madly Creeply podcast, and they're also actors, producers, and creatives in their own right. And they have such an interesting story because just like the rest of us, they needed an outlet for their creativity that was different, and they wanted to go off of a passion they both had. And they both happen to be, and we'll get into this in the podcast, but murder people. You know what I'm saying? We love a murder people. There's a lot of people in the world who really like true crime content, and they are some of those people. So we talk about how they started their podcast and how they actually evolved to end up auditioning and running their own paid podcast for A&E and Lifetime. So they had a year worth of making their own podcast on someone else's dime, and they were paid as the hosts. Your girl could dream. But the cool thing is they turned a passion of theirs into a passion project that was a shit ton of work. They kept it up and it turned into an opportunity for their careers. But don't miss the part where they cut to the fact that this podcast lasted for a complete year, and then the division of that company, spoiler alert, folded. So they had to walk away from what they thought was going to be the thing they were going to do for a while. They got to that place that we all want, which is, I can't wait to get paid to do the thing I love, only to have experienced it and have taken it away and have rebounded from it and taken that back to their own podcast. So they've taken all their experiences, everything they've learned, and now they're back to their own podcast. And they talk about what the world looks like when you have a lot of oversight versus when you're doing things on your own, and the benefits and negatives of both sides. We talk about their individual acting careers and how they both ended up in the space they're in, and what it's like and how to pick a good partner for a project moving forward. You guys are definitely going to want to listen to their podcast. Whether or not you're like a murder person, there's a lot going on here, and their banter is so good. It really is a good lesson in talking and listening and keeping up with the room. So without further ado, please enjoy Kerry and Quinn of the Truly Madly Creeply podcast.
I'm thinking it is.
The capabilities of this now are like...
What do you mean AI capabilities?
It has they had to do magic clips now. We don't use them. Like, my editor pulls my clips, but if you want, you can do magic clips. So it'll pull sound clips from the video for you. It'll stack them in social media size, and you can add you can add captions automatically. The only thing they don't do yet is you can't edit the caption. So like if someone says something, if it catches something wrong, you can't fix it yet.
How much is it a month? Is it like $30 a month?
I want to say less. I think I bought the year, and I think it was less than $300, but I also have multiple studios on here because I run a podcast production company.
Oh, incredible.
So we have
Quinn, maybe we should do it. Maybe we should actually fucking do it. That's for later. Hey, I love that we're taking time up to be like, let's actually, this is not sponsored. And you know what? I'm not going to give them our money. I'm not going to give it. I'm not going to give it. They're already taking your money. I'm not doing it.
You know, I got an affiliate link for you. So
my gosh, yes. Now we're talking, Sam. Let's listen. We are striking. We are in solidarity with you, with the WGA, with, SAG, AFTRA. Let's go. And so if you want that affiliate link, baby, we will click on it.
I got you. We might just keep this in. So if people have podcasts, you can use my affiliate link.
Seriously.
Yeah. Smart. It works really good. But this is an example, right, of being useful, is that like it'll get you started in a direction. They also do transcripts and things like that.
Do we want to be like promoting right now in solidarity with the strike? Do we want to be supporting it? I think what you should do is you should bleep. Like it's the only, you like swear on the podcast, but let's like we don't actually talk about bleep. Like, no, just not here. We are real people. You can tell because I am a mess.
This is perfect. This is like perfect. Because my thing is like, there are components of it that can be useful for a creative to free you up to do other things. But there are parts of it where I'm like, this is not. I just think of when self-checkout came out, everyone was like, it's going to take all our jobs. I would rather still go to a person.
Same.
I hate self-checkout. And I think that we're in that middle ground of deciding like which of us prefer to go to self-checkout. And some people are going to go that way, but I think the fact that we're striking is still important to guarantee that there will always be employees at the counter.
I mean, as one broke actress to another, I would say that it is easier to shoplift at the self-checkout.
They're
if
losing
we're giving
money.
Advice on this podcast.
They are losing money.
I would be remiss not to mention that.
I'm so honest when it comes to self-checkout that I was here. I'm currently in Scotland because I'm at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival right now. I'm doing a show. I actually just finished my show tonight, which was really fun. And don't worry, it's a stage performance, so I'm still in solidarity with the striking performers of SAG-AFTRA and WGA. So don't worry, I am not a scab. How dare you? But there was a self-checkout here, and it is so sensitive that literally every time I had to wait for an attendant, and I was like, "What? This is why people steal." Truly, we were doing a whole shop. It took like 30 minutes to check out. And of course, I'm like, not from here. The money is weird. They have pounds for, it's wild. My coin purse, I've never carried this much change in my freaking life. And I was just trying to check out and I couldn't. So you know what? Production companies, take a note. Take a freaking note.
Yeah. Because you know what you do when you go to self-checkout when it's a grocery store and they ask, is that organic? And you say,
absolutely
no. I would never.
Ew, me organic? Ugh.
Whole
Foods? Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm not paying Whole Foods prices at self-checkout.
If I'm not paying,
it's a baby Bella, not a Chanterelle. Relax.
Yes, actually. Okay, so now we've just gone totally around, but like my sister's fiance is a mushroom farmer, so he would love that.
Does he have any thoughts on the death cap mushroom case going on right now? There's a woman that fed half her family mushrooms and they ended up all dead.
Except for her kids.
Very
Except
dark.
for her children.
No.
It's her in-laws.
Except for her kids. She was served them something else. So served the in-laws mushrooms,
that killed them. And she survived too, because you know what? She's so selfless. She doesn't love mushrooms, but she knows her in-laws do. And so she really went for them, found her own and everything.
This is the makings of a great A24 movie. That is wild. Okay, so now that we've like really been talking for a while, would you guys both identify yourselves as whose voice is whose so they know who to listen
to?
For?
My name is Kerry Ipema.
And I'm Quinlan Pozner.
And we are the co-hosts of a podcast called Truly, Darkly, Creeply. It's hard on Riverside to really get that synced up. But what you need to know is say creeply like a creep. And it's a true crime little podcast that we have.
Yeah, and you're both actors.
We try to be in the world.
Yeah, I am in Scotland right now at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. I wrote and I'm producing my own show that I star in with my friend who's also producing it with me. And so I just finished a performance just right before I came here. My show is called 6 Chick Flicks, or A Legally Blonde Pretty Woman Dirty Danced on the Beaches While Writing a Notebook on the Titanic. That's the full title.
So you couldn't fit any more SEO words into that.
I said SEO, says what? Says who? I said, please don't come after me. But I think to me, I am parodying film on theater and I'm making fun of them and the fact that most of them are written by cis straight white dudes and sort of like what that conversation is and like what is a chick flick? Like to me, a chick flick is a term that men sort of use to diminish women's entertainment. And so I like to sort of take that and spin it a little and see what happens. But it's a good time. It's very fun.
Oh, I love that. I bet that breaks up the murder podcast of it all.
You know, I am a weird guest where I can talk all about chick flicks. And then if I'm like, do you want to hear about a murder? Quinn's had to stop me multiple times from sharing too many murder stories, which I thank Quinn every day for being my filter because I don't have one.
I don't think I got to thank you today now that you're bringing that up.
You know what? That's true.
Just you might want to set a reminder.
Hey, Quinn, while I have you here, hey, Quinn, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Wow. So for you guys, as actors, how did you end up doing a murder podcast? And also, why the fuck does everyone like murder so much? I'm not a murder girl, but I want to understand it. Like, I want to get it. You know?
I love the phrase, I'm not a murder
vibe,
girl.
And it's a whole, there's shows.
I'm obsessed with that. I'm not a murder girl. I'm kind of like a murder man. Like, I am a murderer.
But here's the truth is, maybe you're not a murder girl, but maybe you're a heist girl or a Munchausen's by proxy girl or
a ghosty lady
girl. I mean, I think that something, maybe ghosts. Yeah, I think everybody has something that they connect with on the show. And if not, I do have a couple of listeners that have reached out to say that they mostly listen for the banter and then leave sometimes for the stories. So, you know, to each their own, frankly. But we've got a little bit of everything. And We started it back in October, I think, or September, right before the pandemic. And we were both trying to make content because when you get frustrated with this auditioning world, sometimes the best thing to do is just say, well, I'm not powerless and I can make my own content. And this was an easy thing to say yes to every single week because we could do it from anywhere. And we taught ourselves how, and we had our shitty snowballs from Amazon and we were making it work. It took a couple of years of making it work week to week. And then it sort of blew up and we got a real job.
Yeah, it was,
which we weren't expecting.
I feel like we tripped and fell into podcasting, and especially during the pandemic. Listen, credit where credit is due. Quinn was like, hey, Carrie, do you want to do a true crime podcast? And I'm one of many people who somebody will ask them to do something and I will just blindly say yes. And I have to say, it's worked out pretty damn well in my life. I stumbled into writing a solo show called One Woman Sex in the City because my writing partner at the time was like, do you want to do a One Woman Sex in the City parody? I was like, I've never done a one woman show. I've never written anything. Sure, I'll do that. Quinn's like, do you want to do a true crime podcast? I go, okay, sure, let's do that. And it's been like a really cool practice of saying yes to something and just going for it. And we have just like the most incredible people who listen. They're so supportive. And also it's so wonderful. I like really have moments of extreme gratitude that I get to do this with my friend. I still genuinely like Quinn. She's accepted me as a part of her family. I can't say the same for her. Me, it's like a daily sort of struggle for her, and that I respect. I am a lot.
It's a struggle.
I am a lot.
It's an uphill battle. I strap on those hiking boots. I get out my like ski poles and I trudge it, and I get up that mountain every day.
You really do.
I never go to bed angry.
Quinn, you are so brave. You are so...
You're so brave. I was just going to say.
It's incredible.
This was your guys' answer to like when everyone's telling people to like make their own content. Because that's what mine was. I was like, I don't really know what to make. So I'm going to do this, especially in LA because we don't have like theater. It's tough here. And so was this kind of your answer to that? And do you feel like it checks that box sometimes?
I think the good thing about doing podcasting is that you need, in Kerry and I's case, we're doing it together. But for the most part, we taught ourselves how to edit, how to do it all. And what was great about that is I think you can easily get derailed. I've had that happen. I've had a group of people say, let's start this play reading group. Let's put on a play. Let's do any of these kinds of things. And all it takes is a couple soldiers to fall and the whole thing suddenly like
doesn't exist,
crumbles. Yeah. And I just think like with podcasting, what was so cool was that we were both motivated. We both trusted each other's work ethic, which is enormous. I think that there was pressure because there's one other person that you have to show up for. And so we continue to show up for each other over and over again. And it was sort of fabulous to have moments at the beginning where someone would write us something horrible about like, this was a really bad episode. But then you share in each other's triumphs too and get excited when somebody, when you first two people join your Patreon or the first person reaches out to you on your Instagram account and you're like, people are listening to us.
In fact, I do think it's interesting. Quinn and I actually have both self-produced work before this podcast, which I think is sort of what Quinn had mentioned about trusting one another's work ethic. I come from a musical theater background. I went to school at Indiana for musical theater, and Quinn did undergrad at Sarah Lawrence and got her master's in acting at the New School. Is that correct, Quinn? Is my biography fact-checking correct?
Super impressive.
And Quinn and I actually met doing an immersive show in New York. And Quinn was my boss, and let the record show, Quinn is still my boss. I still respect her as my boss. And she prefers it no other way. Quinn was someone who wrote immersive, sort of interactive, experiential, sort of escape room, improv, like is really funny and has such a knack for writing and was going for it. And at the same time, I had wrote my first one-woman show, One Woman Sex in the City, and was writing more shows. And so I think both of us had this sort of trust in one another's work ethic where I think that definitely, like, in fact, I can quote Quinn. Quinn was like, I asked you because of your work ethic. I think seeing another go-getter, someone who was driven to do something. And for me, that itch was scratched when I first did improv. I went to school for musical theater, and I think I got so sick of auditioning and going to these open calls and feeling like it was just so hard to sort of feel. And I'm sure if I had a better attitude, I would have popped through, or not would have, but I feel like I would have made a better showing. But it was one of those things where when I did improv, I was like, oh, I have autonomy. I can create my own work. And sort of improv is sort of how I entered the world into creating my own content.
Well, okay, so when you guys started the podcast, then you'd already done your work. What does it take? Because what you guys have done and what you built doesn't always equal success for a lot of people. And like what you said about people dropping out, or like one soldier falls and the whole thing falls apart. For our actors who are listening, who are like, I want to do something like this. I want to have a co-host. I want to create something. I want to find a partner, a person. How do you go about that process of like vetting a person you want to do that?
Well, I was going to say that it's interesting because I'm on a lot of podcasting groups and stuff online that offer great advice. But what I'll see that always gives me the willies is somebody on there saying something like, I want to start a podcast, but having trouble deciding what it should be about. That freaks me out. And I have to tell you that, like, I am a murder lady. I am a murder woman. I am a murder person. I'm just into it.
She's a murderer.
I'm super
okay,
into
she's
true crime.
killed people. Let's move.
I am also a murderer.
She's done a murder.
Let's move on. Jack
This
of all
is great.
trades. I'm a triple
great.
threat, and one of the threats is murder. So I'm like, listen, you have to like what you're doing. That's the biggest thing. If you can't think of something you're interested in producing, it is going to fall apart. There's no way. You know, you make hundreds of episodes. You know this. You've made hundreds and hundreds of episodes of this podcast. If you're not interested in the content you're creating, you're not going to keep showing up. And if the person you're making the podcast with can't get on board and be as interested, get themselves there, then they're going to fall off the page. So I think it's the advice has to be, don't decide to start a podcast first and then go, well, what the hell should it be about? You should be passionate enough about the thing you want to talk to people about that the podcast part follows. And that's something we can all do. We can all make a podcast, but there's a lot of really shitty podcasts out there. And I think it's because people aren't passionate about what they're talking about, and you can make it as niche as you want. So I think figure out what you want to say.
I also think with podcasting, it's such an interesting form of media in that it reminds me of theater in a lot of ways, where it's a lot of like just doing it. I mean, I look back at sort of like our first episodes and learning, and I'm sure, Sam, like you've looked like back at, or you do. I actually refuse to listen to my first episodes, but it's one of those things where it's tough. Really tough. But I also like am so grateful to have that of like where we started, you know, in our like shitty microphone era or whatever that looks like. It's an interesting medium in that where it's like, you just have to do it. And Quinn had read somewhere at one point is like how to make a podcast. And it was like, have a consistent release schedule. I don't know. Quinn said it to me once. I heard it. She read it. It got in her. And both of us were like every week. And we just had this like constitution. And it doesn't hurt that we're both people pleasers. So it's like, we have to just like do this. And we love like a job well done, crossing shit off of our to-do list. And it just feels really good to be like every week we put it out. Again, we started it right before the pandemic. And I don't know where we would be without the pandemic for many reasons, because I don't know. I'm not a magician, but I think like having this podcast come out every week in a time where all of our jobs were stripped away, couldn't really make an income doing theater work or performing live, it was like having this content thing. To answer your question earlier, it was like we had something that was coming out every single week. And regardless of where we were, it was coming out. And one of my favorite episodes that we ever did, Quinn was pregnant with her second son while we were recording our podcast. And we decided, we were like recording all the episodes beforehand so she could take a week off, you know, some time off before, you know, she had her kid, give her unpaid maternity leave in this true spirit of American capitalism. And we were joking of like, hey, what if we recorded you in labor? And so we told our listeners we're going to take the week off. And then Quinn was in labor. And I called her and I put her on speakerphone and I recorded her while she was going to the hospital, while she was having contractions, and then after she gave birth to Griffin. And one, it's just so cool to have this little time capsule of this moment in her life, but also it felt really cool that we had people who were interested in sort of what was going on in her life. And it's one of my favorite episodes. It makes me so happy for many reasons, but also the title of it is called I Hate Him. So give that a listen.
I'm absolutely listening to this after that.
Yeah.
It's just me laughing at Quinn while she's like,
the audio quality leaves a bit to be desired.
Quinn is just going like, hold on.
I was like in a taxi at one point and I'm like, oh, I'm in this cab and this cab driver is like, and I have to take me home and then take me back to the hospital because I'm not dilated enough.
It's so good.
It's interesting to me in terms of just podcasts in general. I help people start their podcasts and they often say like, I think I want to keep it about like this thing. I don't really want it to be about me. I don't want to be vulnerable. And I'm like, that's fine, but you're gonna hit a wall and eventually you're gonna stop having things to talk about. And also you're gonna get so many people more invested in what you're saying when they know what you are and who you are as a person. The vulnerability thing is, especially as actors, I'm like, I feel like I'm naked all the time. I'm like, this is me. This is what I got. That type of episode to me is like, yeah, I want to listen to that. And then I want to listen to you tell a story about someone who got murdered by mushrooms, because that to me sets up to who I'm listening to so much better. It's like, I don't know if you guys ever watched Jimmy Kimmel back in the day, but like I never really cared until he had a whole scare with his child and they talked about the children's hospital in Los Angeles and all that stuff with them. And I was like, I really like Jimmy Kimmel now.
Yeah.
Like his vulnerability of sharing that and asking and giving back and things like that made me like him as a person, which made me interested in how he just talks in general. And I think that the same thing works across podcasts. Does it have to be like a moment where you're giving birth you have to share? No, I think you should have boundaries.
We don't
but
have
I
those.
do think that vulnerability, like whatever, I don't really either. I literally talked about pooping the other day on a podcast. It's a subscriber podcast at least.
I know. The Patreon wall, the joy of a Patreon wall is not to be dismissed.
It's
so
amazing,
so
right?
lovely. You're like, let's get into it. Let me talk about how I got ghosted. Let me play you his voicemail. Things like that, moments like that.
Let's play you his voicemail.
Is really fun.
I think being an actor, like you said, because it is like being naked all the time. And so I think that is something that we brought into the podcast, because I think you need to have a healthy enough ego to start a podcast where you're like, I'm okay with saying that it's worth listening to me. But then that's sort of balanced by also this idea that you feel very okay bringing your failures to the forefront of the conversation, whatever they may be. And Kerry and I have talked about auditions that went wrong and things that we wanted that we didn't get, and relationships gone bad, friendships gone bad. My fuck ups with my kids is a huge feature on the podcast. So I think that that's something that people are like, oh, maybe I'm doing everything okay, because seems like these people are total wrecks. But they do seem to be having a good time.
But it's nice. I do think Quinn has 2 kids and a husband. I have nothing. And so it's a nice sort of way to balance.
I think you have Quinn.
I have,
you have Quinn. It sounds
Quinn.
Like.
She's single white
I'm
female.
Single white female,
so she might have it all.
I might listen.
Talk to her in a year, and it'll all be
give
hers.
Me a year. The best is there'll be like I'll be on vacation with the Pozner family, with Quinn and fam, and like it'll be me, her husband, and our 2 kids, and I'll have like one strapped to me to a baby Bjorn, and Quinn will just be like America's favorite family. It's just like.
I take the pictures.
Quinn takes the pictures of me and her family.
I think it did take our podcast listeners a long time to figure out who was
You're like, why is Kerry always holding the kids?
They knew one of us was a mom, but all the pictures are like Kerry and my family.
It's so true. Can we talk about finding an audience before we go into your guys' like growth and all that stuff? I think that that's something that a lot of actors who want to do content creation, who want to like get their fan base going or whatever it is they're trying to do, it feels so scary at first because there's no one and it feels like you're shouting into the void. And so how did you guys go about finding your audience? And feel free to get detailed. Like, did you go on other people's podcasts? Did you share stuff on social media? Like, what was your path?
We didn't know at all what we were doing when we got into this and looking for an audience. Why I say pick something you're interested in is I think that you'll naturally find that you've already surrounded yourself maybe in groups and things like this. And, it was sort of like I was on a couple true crime oriented or paranormal oriented groups online, and I joined more when we started doing the podcast very deliberately, because I'm not afraid to self-advertise, nor should you be, because how else the hell are you going to get people to know? And when people were saying, these are the podcasts I listen to, and I had listened to every single one of them, what's next? What should I listen to? I'm right there to say, try mine. And, I think a lot of people go, try yours. Okay. Like something about that maybe feels too amateur hour or something. But at the same time, I think for every person that thought that, there was one that gave it a listen. And if they give it a listen and like it and tell their friend, that's it. You have 2 more listeners. Walking away from the shame of self-promotion and not being afraid to tell people what you're up to and what you're doing and say, give it a try. That was a big part of it. And we did that on social media primarily, but certainly I'm not afraid to tell people that I meet at parties what I do and say, pull out your phone. Come on, give us a follow.
Give it a follow.
Give
it a follow.
You know, come on. We're having a drink together. Give me a chance.
I have the most trite answer, and it's probably going to be frustrating to some, but maybe encouraging to others. My grandma, when I was in high school, gave me this little framed quote that I've kept with me since then, and I am well past high school age. And the quote is, when you follow your bliss, doors will open where there would not have been doors. Genuinely, that has been true. And not because I like put it on a wall or, you know, vision board. But I do think like there is something about it is like, you know, we know misery loves company, but like positivity and interests also loves company. So it's like when you're putting out that energy into the world, I do think that people will find you and meet you, and people talk. Definitely trying to get on other people's podcasts, which has been amazing. We've also had like really enthusiastic listeners who have been, again, Quinn was the OG #1 fan and was posting about it, but it always fills us with such profound joy when we see our listeners recommend us to other podcasts too. But it's, yeah, Quinn is our sort of like head social media at the moment because it scares me. And I am not as good at self-promotion. I'll be totally honest. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, Kerry was flyering for her own show the other day, and someone who had seen it, not recognizing her, said, saw it, wasn't a fan. So I think, yeah, it's a vulnerable thing,
Quinn,
right?
That is taken out of context. No, this is what happened. Wait. Let the record fucking show. Sorry, Quinn.
I do love that story.
Here's what happened. Okay, everybody needs to calm down because now you're maligning me. You're putting me on blast here, okay? And I don't appreciate it, okay? So here's what happened. I performed an 8-minute spot in the UK's largest theater. You heard of it? Called the Edinburgh Playhouse. 3,000 people showed up to see me do a mediocre job.
Kerry, are you in Edinburgh?
Yes. The facts are these. You might not remember, but I am actually currently in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and here I am working my tail off, okay? Trying to make a living, okay? A single mom who works 2 jobs, who loves her kids and never stops. And I am Reba, okay? I am Reba. I am a survivor. And here I am working my tail off. You got a flyer. You got to promote your show. It's the most dehumanizing thing. And someone looked at it and was like, I didn't like that bit. And I just went, that was me. And they go, it's okay. And then they just... Okay, so I did an 8-minute spot in a 3,000 seat theater, of which some of it involved improv. And I don't know if you know, improv in a 3,000 seat theater is tough. Not easy, not chill. As Lady Gaga says, You can be in a room with 900 people and 99 of them don't believe in you, but one will, and that's Bradley Cooper. And he was not in that audience that night. So that was a bummer.
Shit.
I missed it. Damn it. I'm so embarrassed.
But that guy with the flyer is ready to comfort you with that saying, it's okay.
It's okay. They're like, it's okay.
So UK, Europe, like validation.
But we've been having, honestly, truth be told, like our show's been going very well. It's been very fun. Hey, we got 5 stars, okay, in reviews. So I'll brag about that. Someone liked it. Someone liked our show. It's just embarrassing.
Well, you're there for a reason. Like, no, I love it.
Yeah, I'm there for a reason. I paid a lot of money to come here and hopefully didn't lose money. That's why I'm here. I sound so fucking pathetic on this podcast. It is so embarrassing. I'm embarrassed. I'm actually so embarrassed right now.
This is the vulnerability we were talking about earlier. And also, I will edit this a little, but
not fully though, girl, not fully. And you know what? I think too is like, Sam, I have not read your reviews.
She's 5 stars.
5 stars. Amen, baby. Has anyone given you a bad review? Yeah.
For sure.
It is this amazing thing. Yeah. And I actually do think this is valuable. I'm a people pleaser. I do comedy. I'm an actor. I want people to like me. That's just a part of who I am. And I think it's really important to know that like not everybody is going to. Not everybody is going to get what you do. Not everyone is going to understand who you are. And sometimes people don't like the sound of your voice. Sometimes people don't like you and for no reason. And I think the vulnerability stuff is so important, but it also opens you up to criticism. And it's really hard to put yourself out there. And I think when we're talking about like finding our audience and all that stuff, like all of it sounds so flowery and beautiful and that we found the right people and it's amazing. And that is true. But the negative reviews hurt. I feel that. And it's not all sunshine and daisies. But again, what's been incredible is like the people that do believe in you and also doing it with someone you care about who also believes in you. And so having a co-host like Quinn and having people in my life that can pick you up and support you. I mean, listen, therapy is a viable option and I highly recommend it to everyone. Not everyone's going to like you. And whenever you are vulnerable, when you put yourself out there, you're going to get some negativity back at you. And that's just a part of the process and you're not alone.
Yeah, it's true. And that is something, I mean, as actors, right? How often do we try to book the room, as they say, and then it turns out like, you know, that person just didn't, they just weren't vibing. And you're like, what? That was the best. And you can show that self-tape to 1,700 friends. And they're like, you're so good. Why are you not famous? Oh my God, you're amazing. But you can't, it's this way you can't control what you book and what you don't because it's so subjective. So everyone's opinion is so subjective, including the podcasters. The internet is wild. And the people who write things, I'm like, if you ran this by one person before you wrote it on your phone, they would have been like, don't post this.
Yeah.
I feel like it develops a skin that you can handle
Totally.
a lot more stuff.
Totally.
Because people are speaking on you who have no
They don't know who you are.
true
They don't
impression
know
of
who you are.
Well, and I think that it's important to mention luck because there's nothing you can do to change your luck, but luck is this huge game changer that is very real. And it's no different in the podcasting world than it is for film or for theater. It's not this really clear ramp that you draw where you start at the bottom and then you get the bigger role and then you do well. So somebody gives you the bigger role and then you do well. And then suddenly you're the star of the movie and then you're Hollywood,
and that's
baby.
showbiz,
It's just not really how it's going to work. There's a lot of people that get that breakthrough role and go, here I am. I've made it. I have so many friends in that boat. And they get that job where they go, this one is it. And this is the one that flips it. And now I'm good. And now people are going to be calling me. They do it, they book it, they produce it, whatever it is. And that's just not how it works. With Kerry and I making this podcast, we tasted that a little bit, which is to say we didn't have a huge listenership by any means. We had a healthy listenership and we were having fun. We weren't making a ton of money. Mm-hmm. We were just above breaking even, just above. And suddenly, through luck and just a connection, we got to present our podcast to the people at Lifetime and A&E. And we got to, for lack of a better word, it really was sort of an audition. And they auditioned several sets of hosts for their new true crime podcast. And we got the part and we were floored. We were suddenly swept away in this world where we're calling each other constantly going, is this really happening? This is so crazy. We have to hire like real lawyers to look at this contract, like real lawyers.
Totally.
Like lawyers that are going to send us a box of toffee at Christmas.
Oh, it was caramels.
Like the real thing.
It was caramels. Let's let the record show caramels.
Didn't open it. It's not my thing. I like a chocolate. But so what happened was we get this. It's a total game changer. And we're suddenly being given a bunch of money for doing this show that we had been doing for no money. And we also suddenly are, you know, I just told you Truly Darkly Creeply's origin story. We're Googling how do you make a podcast and buying the cheapest mics we can afford, editing ourselves. And suddenly they say, here's your producer, here's your executive producer, here's the researcher, here's the fact checker. We got to run that by legal. And you're going, what? It takes how many people to make a podcast?
When
this
it was
nuts.
just the two of
and
us
we were
before.
This tiny piece of it.
So wait, so tell me more about this audition. I want to hear about the audition for a podcast because that is fascinating.
It was the audition is so stressful, but I do think it was so funny. Again, what's so nice about working in a partnership is I do think like for me, I was like, it's going to be what it's going to be. We reversed roles a little where I was like, it's going to be fine, Quinn. If we get it, we get it. If we don't, it's fine. No big deal. And Quinn was like, Kerry, this is a big deal. And I was like, we'll see what happens. But essentially what happened was they set up a meeting. They had listened to some of our episodes through a friend of a friend and they liked what they heard. So they brought us on. We had a conversation and they were like, here's sort of a case idea. Can you put this on tape? Edit it, see how it goes. And so Quinn and I recorded it.
And they said it should be short. So we're thinking, like 30 minutes?
Because our short is different.
They're like, no, like 3.
Our short is, I'm going to say, our short is actually very different. My mom thinks we can edit a more. As you said, we are like, keep it in. So we ran through it twice, and then Quinn always does like a first pass of editing. And so we had done like 2 versions. We were like, here's a bit longer with a little bit more jokes and content, and here's something a little bit shorter. And that's probably more of what you're looking for. But I think what was so important about it is that Quinn and I were ourselves. That's it. And I think, again, when we talk about whether it's film auditioning, whether we talk about TV acting, all that stuff, it's like you can play the role, but also like they are looking at who you are. And I think I can say that so many times and it doesn't get through. And I hear myself saying it because I've heard people say it, and I know it's frustrating when someone keeps saying be yourself and you're like, I don't care to hear that again. In this one, what felt so good about it is I was with my friend having a conversation, and we edited it, we sent it on to them, and then we just waited. We had a meeting with them, and then the next day we got the offer. So it was like, it felt like such a whirlwind.
I remember texting Carrie because they said, you'll hear from us EOW. And I freaked out. I said, what does she mean you'll hear from us? Yow! And she's like, end of week, Quinn, how old are you? And I am like 7 years older than Carrie. So I was like, you'll hear from us, yow? What is it? What?
But it was...
Wait, but that happens all the time in work where
the
like
jargon,
someone's like,
man.
can you
the
just
fucking
send
jargon.
me your like UTM link? And I'm like,
stop.
Sure. And I'm like, the fuck is a UTM?
I was in an interview once and they were like, are you comfortable with grids? Can you do grids? Are grids something you're comfortable doing? And I go, what is a grid? And they're like, oh, a spreadsheet. And I go, you couldn't have said that fucking earlier? Like you couldn't have told me a little earlier what you meant? I mean, it's a fucking spreadsheet. Let's move on. But again, like that audition process, and it's different. I understand the difference in context because we were writing our own script in this situation and I had someone to act alongside. And of course, when you're doing TV film, someone's giving you a script and making you, put it in your own voice. And sometimes it feels weird. Sometimes that's not how you would sound or not what you would say. But I think the reason why we got this opportunity was because we were 100% authentically ourselves. And we hold ourselves to that standard. And I think Quinn would call me on it and I would call her on it if for some reason we weren't.
Yeah, I would say that's true. I would also say we struggled. I would say that it was not seamless because we're really used to not being in a room with anybody when we record and having like 2 producers watching you have a conversation. Like I would say like our first many episodes, we were like anxious and like being like, what does Lifetime sound like? Like this is the real deal. This is professional. So there's something about that then becomes you don't trust yourself. And it took us a really long time to come back to ourselves. And the more we came back to who we were and the more we were true to ourselves, the feedback we would get from them is, yes, more of that. That's what we want. And it's so crazy that someone can hire you and say, I hired you for you. And you go, great. And then you put on a blazer and you like totally like do something weird and different with your voice. And you're like, I'm a professional. And they're like, no, I really meant you. And you don't believe them. And you try to give them something else that you think they're looking for.
I don't know. This is where I might disagree with you a little bit. I think when we started doing our show, it took us a minute to come into it like anything. And I think what, to me, the biggest barrier in doing something that was for a larger network was the many more hands that were on the show. Because when we were doing our own show, the people we had to sort of impress or pitch ideas to was one another. And we were always upfront and honest about how we felt about it. And I think when we went into a new situation, a new world of corporate podcasting, if you will, there were just many hands and it was a little confusing about what was expected of us. I think that to me felt more of the truth because I think we tried. I think Quinn and I really did try to keep being ourselves. But again, it was just like many hands. It just was a little confusing. For me, at least, that's my experience, was it felt like, what's going on? Are we able to be ourselves? Like there was a little bit of that for me towards the end of it, which the reason we no longer do that is because A&E shut down their entire audio department. And so we had just gotten picked up for a second season, which like Quinn and I were so stoked about. It was really exciting.
We spent that money.
We planned to spend it.
We were like, hey, 50 more episodes.
Carrie's going to Edinburgh.
Great.
Yeah, that's what
I was signing up my kids for zoo camp. I mean, I was going crazy.
We were having fun.
And then they were like, those 50 episodes?
Psych. Actually, psych.
We're so sorry, but the whole thing is closing, shuttering.
What was the timeline between when you were told that you were going to come back and between
we
when things shut down?
We never broke. We were first contracted for like 46 episodes, but it could go up to 52, and they ended up exercising the 52-week option. And so our contract would pick up. So we were informed in like March or April that in May we were coming back. We're recording, we're doing the work, we're having a good time. We're like researching, pitching, and recording and all that good stuff. And the team that we worked on was so wonderful, and the people we worked with were incredible. And then we recorded an episode. I was about to go on a cruise to Alaska. Carrie's a world traveler. And we get an email that's like, hey, quick update. And so I'm an anxious person. I go, Quinn, are you feeling worried about this? And she's like, nah, we just got picked up. We're fine. And I was like, I don't have a good feeling. But I didn't say that. And so I was like, all right. So we show up after we record and we go into this meeting and they kind of go, how's it going? Where are you going? So we have some bad news. They have decided to stop doing the audio part of this business. And it's a really humbling experience. And it was one of those things where we're on a call with all of these people who are losing their jobs. And these are people that gave us an opportunity. These are people that cared about the show that we were making. These are people that put a lot of their heart into this world. It was this very interesting experience where it was like, it's hard. Obviously, we felt bad for ourselves, but you're also like in a meeting going like, everyone here is losing their jobs. And that's so sad.
It was the best way to lose a job ever because we felt like a lot of love leaving. We felt a lot of love the whole time we were there, frankly. And I think that we felt supported through leaving. It was more just dealing with our own sadness to lose the job because it was a great job.
Yeah.
And again, I think when we got that job, I told Carrie, I said, I would do this for my whole life. I would do this 20 years and I'd be happy. And I know that it's a podcast, so maybe I can hope for 5 is more realistic, but only getting the 1 year
it was fun,
really
man.
just sad because we loved it.
But you know what? I do look back with like such gratitude and being like, what a fun thing that we got to do. Like truly looking back, like it's so cool that happened. And I do think we learned so much, and we're coming back to our podcast, and it was great telling our listeners that we were coming back to Truly Darkly Creeply. And that was so incredible. The amount of support and love we got from our listeners that were so stoked to come back. And our Patreon, like people were just coming out in droves to support us, and they still are. And it feels really cool to be supported by such an incredible community.
Oh, it's such a good example, though, of the fact that you guys were able to pivot back to your original work.
Yeah.
And I think we see this all the time with actors in the business who like, they've won these big awards, they've done this thing, they've done that thing. And then we don't see them for a few years. And then they come back and like doing something in a play, or they become the voice of this animated character. It's like they go back to a place that is just joyful to them. Because the business, you have no control over where the business is going to put you, because the business is just a dollars game. Mm-hmm. And you've seen people book things, Quinn, that were like the big thing. And they were like, this is going to be the thing that flips everything. And then it changes or it goes away. So how did you guys pivot back to your own work? Has it been tough? Have there been mindset shifts that have made it work for you? Like, what is this process?
I'm going to shout Carrie out right away because she's a workhorse if that hasn't already been established. And she, in the meeting where we got laid off, her first follow-up question to the layoff was, and can we get rid of the non-compete so we can go straight back into our podcast? And everyone in the meeting was kind of shocked. They go, that's your question? And she's like, yeah, I just need to make sure I can like go right back to work. And they were like, oh, yeah, okay. Kudos to her for like not even taking a beat to receive that she'd lost a job. She's already figuring out how to continue.
Yeah.
So I would shout her out for that. And that attitude is why I like to work with her.
We are a crisis manager. If someone breaks a bone when I'm around, 911 has already been called, got ice on the way. We're all calming. We're taking deep breaths. We're doing Lamaze. I think that also goes to, it's like we hired an attorney to negotiate our contract, which was so helpful and beneficial. And they asked questions that we didn't realize to ask. And it's so important. let us learn from Taylor Swift. Have an attorney look at your shit. But I think in this one too is understanding the limitations of our contract and understanding what does that non-compete mean, finding out losing that job. There was a world in which we wouldn't be able to come back to our show in the immediate future. And obviously, I don't want anyone to lose their job because it's a horrible feeling. I don't like that anyone experienced an ounce of what we experienced. But because that part of the company shut down, they were less interested in the compete clause. And so that we did benefit from that, where we reached out and said, hey, can we talk about our experience on the podcast? Can we pick up what we were doing? Can we remove the limitations on our Patreon? Because we were able to negotiate maintaining our Patreon throughout doing the new show, which was great. So we can still have our banter and sort of that release. But yeah, that was something that we were able to do. And as soon as the last episode came out, now last week on Tuesday, we put our first episode out that Friday. So there was no stopping. There was no break. And I'm recording while I'm out of town at festivals doing my show in Edinburgh. Hey, in case anyone actually forgot, here I am in Edinburgh. Anyway, so that was, I think like Carrie Fisher says, take your broken heart and turn it into art. I think like you can sit and wallow. And by the way, feel free to do so. If that's what your body needs, go for it. Who am I to stop you? But I think for Quinn and me, it was like we had this practice of every week doing this job. I'm going to keep doing it. Who knows what can happen? Maybe we're going to be better off than before. And that's a total possibility.
Yeah. How does it feel going back to doing your own editing?
Quinn, I'm going to shout Quinn out.
I personally
Quinn loves
like editing.
You do?
I do like editing. I like it. You know why? I also think that like when you consider film editing or comedy and stuff, like I can create sometimes even better moments, I think. And it's not like overly manufactured, obviously. It's still just us authentically being us. But I kind of love being like, now this was really the crux of that conversation and whittling it down. And it feels like its own little art form. So you're done doing your research, which I love the research component a lot. Then we do the recording. I love that component. Then I go do the editing and I love that component. So that's sort of why this was really made for me. I like the crafting along the way and it exercises 3 totally different parts of my brain.
And then I listened to the edit and I did cut something that Quinn kept in because I didn't think it sounded great. And I cut one little thing and I just want to admit it right now. I'm so sorry, Quinn. I'm so sorry. But it does help to have, Quinn does the first edit, which is huge, which is the most time consuming part of it. And then I just listen through and do some audio stuff if it sounds bad. And then I'm the technical support for our team. That's my role here is tech.
She explains the acronyms if ever they are tossed our way, where I'm like, EOW? And she's like, let me explain.
I'm like her little assistant in her here being like, that means end of week, so she's like, yes, I knew that. I help her in that way.
The funny thing was, so I wanted to hear kind of how you guys were doing in terms of like the cadence and how the podcast felt and like your general energy. So I went and listened to the last episode of your A&E podcast. And then I listened to the first episode.
Oh my God.
Dropped, and I was like, these bitches are fine. It's like, your energy is still there. I was like, they're going to kill this. This actually might be one of those scenarios where like Jamie Lee Curtis was on a show with her father and she got removed from the show. She got kicked
Bye, Nepo baby.
And,
sure. See ya.
Because she got kicked off that show. Exactly. And because she got removed from that show, she was available to audition for Halloween. Because she booked Halloween, her then career turned into what it was. Because she was removed from this thing. So she had no idea at the time that this quote unquote failure was setting her up for the dominoes that were about to fall. But like, what a gift of something being removed so there could be more space. Mm-hmm. So I feel that with you guys. I wanted to test the waters. I was like, let me see how they're doing, how they want to talk about this. Because it can be very jarring, right? I've been on shows before and I got my parts cut. And I'm like, well, I told my whole family to watch that episode.
That's always tough.
It feels like you did something wrong, even though you know you didn't. The attitude adjustment to me just like screams success. Like that to me just feels like it's inevitable that you guys are just going to go up and up.
Well, it's
whatever
exciting too, is we had because we did sort of this podcast, we had a marketing team and I don't know, but we our listenership was great. Like in the last, I think we had something like 60,000 listeners the last month we were at A&E. And so Quinn and I were just like, what's really cool too about what A&E let us do when they were shutting things down is they were like, plug your show. tell people about your show, which again, they didn't have to do. And the fact is they go, no, plug your shit. Tell us where to find you. And so when Quinn and I were ending that podcast, we got to go, hey, everyone, like, if you liked this, like, follow us over here. It's going to be more banter. It's probably going to be a little bit loosey-goosey, but it's 2 stories now. And we're going to be doing paranormal and ghosts, and there's more stuff. But it's like we were starting to really get more of our personalities into the A&E podcast, and that's the direction we were going. And so coming back to TDC, Truly Darkly Creeply, just felt like coming home. But I will say, your question before is, how was that? I did feel nervous. Like I definitely, and Quinn, again, it's so wonderful to work with someone who, like, when you're feeling down, they can help you. When they're feeling down, you can help them. It's so nice to have someone else to bounce these ideas off of and bounce these feelings off of. But Quinn, I was like, I'm feeling anxious.
Plus my looks.
Plus, look at her. Stunning. It's like I was feeling so anxious about coming back, being like, is this going to be enough? Sure. Are people going to like us? That's that feeling. And again, having a friend to go through it with and be like, that's enough. We are enough exactly how we are. And that's that.
Yeah. Okay, so if someone's not already on board, if after this conversation we haven't convinced you to either A, vacation in Edinburgh, or B, subscribe to the podcast, where do you guys want to direct people to?
Oh, I'll answer that. I think just knowing that this is the podcast you're listening to, I would start at episode 100, where it's a celebratory episode. We're celebrating 100 episodes, but more to the point, I tell the brutal story of my audition for Sleep No More in New York. That made me laugh so where hard. I did not know till the middle of the audition that I had shown up to the dance audition.
It's such a good
and I am not
story.
A dancer.
It's
I am an
such a
actor.
Good story.
So if you'd like to hear how that unfolded, I'll give you a couple spoilers. One being, I didn't leave for some reason.
Well, you did make an exit.
And it was a room of professional dancers.
Quinn?
So if you want to hear how that went, start at that episode. You'll get the whole story. And it's a doozy. You will want to find me afterwards to give me a hug or put me out of my misery. So bring a gun, bring a flower, whatever you choose. It's brutal.
Should we offer on Patreon you to recreate that dance? Is that something that we should offer on our Patreon?
I don't think I ever could. So no. You know what? If you join Patreon, I won't do the dance in front of you. People should pay me not to dance is the truth.
No, but for real, I understand that so wholeheartedly. That sounds awful. in college, I was in the theater program and they made us audition for the musicals. And so I always had to do the dance calls. And I was like, this is just my quarterly humiliation.
So
why do I have to be here?
I'm so sorry. And I will say,
it is so weird.
Yes.
It's like somebody being good at writing and they're like, cool, just do a little geometry for us. And you're like, wait, that's not, it's just this other thing.
Quinn's defense,
I don't do it.
She was invited to
you're a sculptor, blow some glass.
Quinn thought she was going to the mover audition part of the show, and it was in fact not, because she is listen, Quinn, you're a mover, okay? I don't know what to tell you.
And a
you're
shaker.
You're a mover and you're a shaker, and you look good doing it. It was your gift to Sleep No More. I love a dance call. I do. I love a dance call. I grew up as a little dancer, but I gotta tell you, doing musical theater dance calls is enough to take you off a musical theater. I think it can be a really judgmental place. I don't know, Sam, if you felt that when you were doing your dance call, and it's when you're already vulnerable and auditioning and things like that. Again, all you can do is have fun. And don't you wish you could go back to yourself in college and be like, you should make a joke. You'd probably get cast if you laughed and had fun doing it and took a little bit of a load off and was more yourself. And you were like, I can't do this, but let's have fun and smile. I bet you would have gotten cast, truly. And that's how you missed out on your musical theater career. And that's actually how you missed out.
And now we're all just podcasters and we just talk words.
You can also find us just at Truly Darkly Creeply, which is us on Instagram. And you can find that wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Beautiful. Spoken like a podcaster. I love it. Ladies, thank you so much for your time today. This was an absolute blast. You guys are hilarious. And I'm so glad I know you.
Oh my God, Sam, thank you so much for having us. This was a blast.
Thank you for having us. This was so fun.